My name is Robert Jones. A little bit about me. I am 21 years old, just turned 21. I am from Noblesville, Indiana. And I realized when I made this presentation, I just realized this morning, but this is off center. And that kind of bothers me a little bit. So I want to go to the next page. And this one is too. Wow. My name is Robert Jones. My life as a learner, that's what we're going to talk about today, because I've had a rather unique experience, I think, and maybe you guys will think it too. So we're going to get into my schooling experience and how I've made the best out of that. So, first thing I want to say is that I love school, I love learning. I just don't like school. So I love learning about a different variety of things. I think learning is important. I think it is fun. I think if you want to become a better person in your life, you have to be learning constantly. I don't think learning ends once you graduate high school. I think you got to continue that on throughout your life, because if you're not learning, you're just being stale, honestly, in my opinion. So, elementary school, I really hated going to school. I dreaded the experience. And it wasn't the teachers. It was just the fact that being in school, having to sit down, be quiet, read this, recite that, it just wasn't for me. I had so much energy, and it just wasn't something that I was really feeling. And my brother, he's the complete opposite of me. He was an A student from kindergarten. He just loved school. He could do all the stuff, and so we kind of competed a lot when it came to this kind of stuff. And so I never was, from the beginning, a traditional learner, because I just couldn't get down with sitting down and doing that kind of stuff. It just wasn't really for me. And so the teachers that I had, they had a hard time of getting me to do everything, whether it's just writing something or going to a class or staying in a class. It just was not something that was really fun for me or for them. And I love learning things, but I just didn't love school. That's really simply put how that went. I loved things that were interesting to me and that I thought were fun. And that's what I wanted to do the whole time I was at school. But when you go to school, you have to sit down and you have to learn the standards and learn the things that they teach you. And so it just really wasn't something that I thought was super fun. So as far as my upbringing, it's been I had a really interesting upbringing. I was born February the 3rd, 1999 in Indianapolis, Indiana. My father, Robert, I am the third. So my grandfather is the first. He's the second, and then I'm the third. If I ever have a son, he's going to be the fourth, because I just like my name. But this is me, and this is my brother Rylan. He is, let me think, he's 11 months younger than me. So we're super close. We've been close our entire lives, and we're really a good team, because he is the book smart one. He's the one that's analytical, that thinks things out, thinks things through. If he was giving a speech right now, he'd have it written down on paper. He'd be reading down the speech, because he likes to do things perfect. Now, me on the other hand, I'm kind of sloppy. I'm not the best student. He was a great student. He listens to people. I sometimes don't do that. So I think we're a good pair, because we complement each other very well. So on a day, February the 5th, 2 days after my birthday in 2005, I lost both of my parents. And I'm going to play a video that's going to talk a little bit about that. So that's kind of a gist of my life as a whole up until now. The start of my life was pretty bad. Losing your parents, it kind of messes you up. And when I was in elementary school, that is something that really affected my experience. So all the not liking school and the behavior problems, dealing with the teachers and the teachers having to deal with me, all of that is really what stemmed from the situation that I had, that me and my brother experienced. Once that happened, we came with our grandmother, and she brought us up to Noblesville, and from there, she tried to provide the best support system for us. She tried to make sure that we could grow up and have all the things that we needed. And so I really thank her, because if it wasn't for her, then I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So kind of fast forward, a couple of years. I go to middle school, I go to high school, and I started off pretty bad in elementary school, and then the older I got, like the 5th grade, I started realizing that getting in trouble all the time really was not worth it, because literally every week I'd find myself in the principal's office, and it started to get on my nerves. And so I was like, I got to start doing something different. So something pretty much snapped and was like, hey, you need to start behaving a little bit better. And so that's what I did. And I just always, throughout my middle school and elementary school, I never liked school. It just wasn't for me. And when I got into high school, the first 2 years, I was like, man, how many more years do I have left? Like, I'm ready to go. And it was just getting to the point where I just couldn't do it. And so thankfully, junior year, I ran into Don, who you guys heard speak earlier. And the way that I got into his class was really just complete luck, because I was in math class, right? And we're working on this project on our iPads, and we're using Minecraft. And he wanted to film a video because it was kind of innovative, the project was. And so I volunteered because I could get out of class. And so, of course, I went with him. And we go down to his room, and he's got this glass, like wide open room where if you walk by it, you can see into his room. And I was like, hey man, like, what are you doing in this class? Like, what is this? And so he started explaining the class and what was going on in the class. And I was like, man, oh, there he is. And I was like, man, this is kind of interesting. And so he was like, hey, let's go down to the guidance counselor today and get you signed up. So I was like, okay, well, when I go to get my schedule done, I'll do it. He's like, no, let's go now. So we went down to the guidance counselor's office, and he got me put into the class. And so the next year I got in the class, and the first year that I was in there, he had these speakers, and they sounded really nice. And so I would go to his desk and plug my phone into his computer, and I just play music. Like, I wouldn't do anything in his class the first year. It didn't sink in that it was important and that it was something that I really should take really seriously, because it was a heck of an opportunity at the time. And it was like a lot of New Year's resolutions. So people, they say, okay, I'm gonna lose 20 pounds, or I'm gonna go to the gym, or I'm gonna quit smoking. They say all this stuff and they don't do anything. And that was my first year in the class. I would go in there, I'd sit down, I wouldn't do anything. I would tell them that I was doing stuff and I wasn't. And I had all the people motivating me, like, hey, you can do this class, it's gonna be great. And I just lacked the drive and the determination and the will to actually do something, because I was still undervaluing the importance of it. It was really important. And so senior year, I was like, man, I'm about to be out of this place. Like, this is about to come to an end, and things are going to get really serious here pretty soon. And so I need to start doing stuff. And so me and a classmate, Jack Caroselli, good friend of mine, we started our podcast, Fruitfully Honest, where we would go in there and we had the microphone set up, and we'd record these podcasts for like 15 minutes to an hour. We'd talk about whatever we felt like talking about. And it was a really good first project, and you always, and this is one thing I want to stress to you guys as teachers who are doing Genius Hour or something like this, is that your first project, the student's first project, is not going to be something that is going to be glorious or look good. It's going to be bad quality most of the time. You're still learning, you're figuring out things. And so that was a good introduction to me trying to do things like this. And we started off doing the podcast, and we'd film them. And I thought that was really cool. The idea of filming podcasts and filming stuff, I thought was amazing. And so we later on spoke at the Indiana Chamber of Commerce and got to start doing some different things. And I kind of had a shift in my life. I started thinking about things more entrepreneurially, and started thinking about things like, how can I do something fun and impact different people? That was really a big thing that really motivated me. And I just started, realizing that it was towards the end of my school career and that I needed to start doing things. And so senior year of high school, I worked at an insurance company, and that was really interesting, calling 65-year-old people, interrupting their day, older people too, 70, 80-year-old people. Hey, how's your insurance? You want to change? You want to switch your insurance? And they, you know, they cuss you out. They'd say all this. Who is this on my phone? So it was really fun. But I was like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And so then the next summer, I interned at a real estate company, and I was like, I love real estate, rental properties. All this should be fun. We get there, and I'm sitting in an office. I'm sitting at a desk for 8 hours, and I'm putting in these numbers, and it's calculating formulas in Excel. And I was like, oh, it's kind of mind-numbing. And so I was like, I don't want to do this either. And so just trying different things, experimenting, that is going to be something that is going to better your students, because you want to, like he mentioned earlier, doing stuff in high school, testing while you're still in high school or elementary school, whatever, figuring out those things early is going to save you a lot of time, because I saved a lot of time by not staying in insurance and in real estate. So I'm just going to throw that out there. So I graduated high school and I started Gent Style. It originally started, it was the Fashion Brothers. Me and my brother started a YouTube channel. We wanted to make videos because everybody said, hey, you guys dress nice, you look good, you guys are well presented, you guys should share this with other guys. And so that's what we did. And my brother, being the very book smart, you know, I got to focus on my school, he didn't want to put as much effort into it as I did. So I was like, hey, well, how about you focus on your stuff, I focus on my stuff, and we call it a day. And so I decided to continue doing this, and I rebranded the channel to Gent Style, which is a channel that teaches guys of all ages how to dress, how to do so affordably. And the reason I think it's important is because people, they look at you, they make judgments based upon how you dress. So if you look like a snob and you get in front of people and you're talking, they're probably not going to take you as seriously as if you're wearing, you know, a nice suit, or you're wearing a dress shirt or some dress pants. And so that was a really big focus of mine, is how do you teach this to younger people, because younger people, they don't think that certain things like that, like being professional, how do you carry yourself in a professional environment, how do you shake hands firmly, because I've shaken a lot of hands and they just like, and I'm like, dude, that's not how you shake hands. You shake firm, you shake with a little bit of squeeze. And just those little things, like having your collars, like I have these things in here in my collar. There are these little magnets, okay? And what these do is they keep my collar standing up. So my collar is like pretty neat. If the little things, like your collar is all the way over here, you look sloppy, and people, they judge that. If you're in an interview and you're not well presented, that's going to be a big thing, and that's going to show the people that you're not paying attention. Like wearing a watch. I think wearing a watch is super important because it shows that you pay attention to time. And if people see you looking at your watch, they're like, oh, this guy's busy, he's got stuff going on. So it's, and I mean, partially, it's all part of it is you just have to, you're kind of faking it till you make it, okay? So that's how I like to explain it to people. You gotta look like you're in the position that you want to be in life. And so that's really where that is. So professional etiquette, acquiring new skills is big. You've got to be able to acquire new skills and learn things. And this video right here, it's my biggest, most popular video. It's got like 30,000 views. This was a review that I did of a $39 suit, and it's a really horrible video, to be honest with you. And so I'm going to play it because I'm going to show you the evolution of where I started with Gent Style, and how, because I've constantly desired improving and done different things to make sure that my content was better, that's going to show the evolution of that. So here is that video. What's up, guys? It's Robert Jones, and welcome back to another episode of Gent Style. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to talk about a suit that I got recently, and that suit is an Alain Dupatit suit. I believe I pronounced that right. And the suit, what's special about it, it only costs $39. So I'm going to do a comprehensive review of the suit and basically go over. So I'm not going to play the rest of it, but the thing that I really took from the early videos, and when I look back at them and I watch them, is I started off, I had a base point, and I think it was a decent one. It was a good start, but I knew I could always do better, and I knew I could always improve my content and the stuff that I was putting out. And so I like to show this video because it's quick and it's in 720. It's not HD. It's I showed the suit for a total of 12 seconds in the video. So I buy a suit and I'm talking about the suit. Shouldn't I show the suit a lot more than 12 seconds in a 3-minute video? So it got a lot of views, but the comments were, "Where's the suit? You didn't even show the suit. 12 seconds." So it was the first like big one, and people, it had a lot of dislikes, and people, it was, you know, I got a lot of good, sometimes harsh criticism, but it was a good starting point, and I really learned from that experience. And that's what, you know, if your students are going to work on a project, they got to take that into mind, is that the first product, it's not going to be good. Just going to throw that out there. So being able to take criticism and make the needed changes was a huge part, and that is why my content now looks a lot better and I dress better. I mean, it's all a process, and handling, you know, the trolls, letting your haters be your motivators. That's what I put on there, because you're going to have your students and you guys, you're going to have people, you're going to want to do stuff, and your students are going to want to do things, and there's just going to be people out there that are constantly going to hate and hate and hate on what you're doing. And so being able to get through that, that means something. So another thing, learning from other people's failures is huge. I have some family members, and they've made a few mistakes in their life, and through their mistakes, I learn from their mistakes. I don't do what they did, because why should I do what somebody did wrong and I can see the outcome of their bad decisions? So if you have a student and he's working on something and it's an idea that's already been tried and it's not something that can be done, then, you know, learn from other people's successes and failures. And also investing in yourself, it's a big thing. When you start working on something and it starts to become a lot better, being able to show that you're serious, I think, means investing in yourself. And I'm not talking about just financially buying stuff or investing like money, but taking the time out to learn, to constantly improve. That's something that your students are definitely going to want to do. This is a later video. This is here a couple of weeks ago. I learned recently how to tailor my own clothes because my grandmother is 75 years old, so she's getting a little bit older. She has arthritis, her hands, they cramp up and stuff, and so I needed some stuff really quickly done, and she does all this for free because, you know, I'm her grandson and she loves me. And I was like, "Hey, will you show me how to hem these pants?" And she's like, "Sure." So she shows me how to do it. It's the easiest thing. And then I'm like, "Okay, will you show me how to take in this suit?" And it's a little bit difficult, but she shows me how to do it. I'm like, "Okay, I can do this." So this video is basically a pair of sweatpants that I bought from Walmart. So they're just Hanes sweatpants, $6 sweatpants, and they fit horribly when I get them. And I'm gonna just play the video and let you see what I did to them. Oh. So right here, I picked up some sweatpants, and I'm gonna show you guys how to tailor these sweatpants, how to remove this god-awful looking thing that's down here on the bottom. It looks totally bad, but I'm. So that's basically, you could see that evolution. So you could see where I started. I started talking about a suit. The footage looks horrible. I didn't show the suit. And then I evolved to, okay, now it's time to get a better camera. It's time to get a nicer background and different lighting. It's starting to really get serious with this. And so I took where I came from, and I constantly would watch other people's stuff and take inspiration from that and learn from their mistakes as well, because they also made similar mistakes that I was making. And you could see it in their older videos, but now in the new ones, that stuff's not there. And so I realized I had to get rid of some stuff and change things and do things a little bit differently. And so kind of getting into some more advice for your students, the first thing I'd have to say is don't be afraid to explore. You have to be able to look around and see things that are going on and test different things, and you have to be able to decipher what is an opportunity, what isn't an opportunity. So if I'm sitting what's your name? Rebecca. So if I'm with Rebecca and I'm drinking this coffee out of here and I realize that there's always something wrong with the top. It's never staying close. Then maybe I'm going to come up with a different design for that top, and that could be a product. So just literally anything that you see that is a problem that people are dealing with, that can be something for your students to try to work on and try to improve, because those are, you know, all the successful people in the world. Benjamin Franklin, when he rose the kite and the electricity struck the kite and they figured out how to harness it. Like, just doing anything that can figure out, that could be a way for your students to have an opportunity, and just being curious, you're going to be able to explore and figure out how to do things in a better way. So that's a big thing. And then the next thing, the most important thing that I want you guys to take from this, and the most important thing that I think your students can learn, is you can have all these ideas, but if you don't do anything with the ideas, then you're wasting time. It's useless. So make sure that they know, okay, yeah, it's fun to be creative, it's fun to come up with stuff, but if you're not able to actually implement and actually do, you're wasting time. That's a really big thing, because my first year in the innovations class, I would literally talk about doing all this stuff. I was the man. I was going to do this, I was going to do that, but I didn't do anything. And one day I was in there, and Don, he called me out, and he said, "You are one of the biggest embarrassments that I have, because you haven't done anything. You said you were going to do all this stuff, and you didn't do anything." And so that really kind of hit me hard, and I realized, okay, maybe I should get my stuff together. And so just doing that is going to be the way to go. You got to do things, you got to experiment. So this portion of it, if you have questions, I want to know, how many of you guys are implementing some sort of Genius Hour into your class right now, or 20% time? Raise them high. Okay, so a couple. So normal teachers, how are you guys helping those non-traditional learners? Anyone? Any answers? Any? What are some questions that you guys have for me?
Can I give some context real quick?
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah, help me out.
I was excited to hear Robert present. First of all, this is his first time presenting, so proud dad. When he was nice, and what I said, because what I said was even worse. So I love Robert. He's like, you know, I love all my students, but do they know about some of the?
Yeah, they know about my background. Yeah.
But school wasn't meant for Robert. He struggled with it, but I could tell he liked learning. And when he said I did nothing, I mean, yeah, he was making it seem as though he was doing stuff, and I knew that. And to my discredit, I just kept prodding him and poking him. But it's the oldest saying in the world. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And probably our most pivotal moment, where we'll always remember that day, I asked Robert for his 2-week reflection, and he said something flippant like, "I didn't do anything." And I said in front of the class, "You are my biggest disappointment ever." Right. And everybody went, "Damn." Not cool. And he had a moment and collected himself. And then after the period, he's like, "I needed to hear that. Thank you." And we were on level terms ever since, because I was like, I was working way harder than Robert was. But this is really common with our students. We can set the environment. You know, we buy ourselves things on New Year's Eve to set things in place. It's the want. And so in a lot of cases, all these things that we talk about, I was just having a word with somebody after my keynote, like, it kind of is confusing to our students. We're like, hey, we're going to be innovative and new. Okay, now sit down and memorize. Even you guys, which I heard are more progressive than most, I just heard that you guys are going to be, your school pay is going to be tied to state grading. So all this talk about innovation and moving things forward, it's until there's this collective, no, seriously, what are we doing to prepare kids for the future is really essential. I had the luxury of having a bizarre class. And he didn't know what he was doing because he was used to, I had talked to somebody else, like I'm running an alternative program. This kind of stuff goes well with alternative kids when they have a work ethic. If they don't like school because they hate it, I understand, I do. But Robert never didn't like learning. I mean, for crying out loud, by the way, I just love being back and I'm not trying to be like, but the amount of women's heads nodding up and down when he was sewing things, and they're like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. Like, he taught himself how to do video editing. He taught himself how to do good shooting. Taught himself how to sew. How to do SEO. This is what I'm inspired by Robert, is that some people like learning, they just don't like compliance. And that's the essential question, is that when he's saying, what are you doing in your classroom? What he's really saying is, what are you doing beyond compliance? And if the answer is, nothing right now, that's fine, that's cool. Let's start thinking about what are we doing. If you ask yourself, why do I teach what I teach? And the answer is because it's on our test at the end, and that's what our state says we have to do. Is there a little bit of time where it's moving past compliance? I think that's really what he's asking. I'll shut up now.
So, any questions? Anyone want to throw something out there? And I will elaborate and try to help you with your problems if you have a student that is not, like in the last group, I had a lot of questions, and one of the ladies, she mentioned, having a student that comes from a similar scenario as mine, how do you take that student and get them to do better? And that is really the ultimate question, because you're going to have a lot of these students in elementary school, and you're going to have them, and they've had these traumatic experiences, or they come from these bad backgrounds, and they don't know how to adjust and fit in. And so that is one of the things that I experienced, and I really couldn't give her a 100% solid, here's what you do, because within those situations there's so many different variables. But one thing that I did mention is having that support team and that support group is going to be huge. That may not be there at home, but if you're out and the student has 4 or 5 teachers that he sees in a day or in a week that all get together and sit around in a circle and talk about that student and try to come up with unique ways to better that student, get them to start to get it, those are things that you can do to help those students out. So does anyone have, yes?
I think a lot about combating cynicism, because I do run a classroom, I teach agriculture, and we're literally trying to save the world in agriculture, and like most of my students are just like, we're so screwed, there's no point in trying. So like, because they're fully aware of the problems and they care, but they're like, we are just so overwhelmed, we are at this point cynical and apathetic. Yeah.
So, like what I'm kind of.
So like.
Yeah. So, I guess how you fight that is, that's a really good question. So for me, man, that is a good question.
Sorry.
Well, what did you do?
So
you weren't exactly
So when I started school, coming from my scenario that I came from, I was bad, I misbehaved, and I'm trying to think of.
Can I have a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
So, I teach special education
Okay.
in middle school, so I see a lot of those students from backgrounds or defiant or students that put off a hard exterior. Is there something that teachers can do in that scenario, or is it a mindset that it just takes time for the student to have to realize? Like, I keep telling myself I can only do so much and I'm gonna keep being there.
Yeah.
And then is that just the mindset just has to change for the student? Or is
So,
there anything you can do extra?
So a lot of teachers that I had, and I'm going to give you a few examples. So in the second grade, I had a lady named Miss Griffey, and she was the nicest lady. And I remember her taking me to McDonald's, like on just random occasions where I was doing good, I was starting to behave, and she would reward me with something that I liked. And I don't know how the rules were back then, but like we would drive to McDonald's in the middle of the school day. And I don't know how I guess she got permission from my grandmother and the school was fine with it, but again, this was in 2006. So you could probably get away with that back then, but you probably can't now. So, yeah, you know, 16, 14 years ago. But that was really something that, because up to that point, I hadn't had a teacher do that for me. And that was really big. Like, that was like, oh, she kind of really cares about me. And so I also had a guy named Mr. Booth, who was like the director of students for Noblesville. And he would come and have lunch with me every week. He'd either bring me some lunch or I'd just eat my lunch that I had. And we'd stay in the classroom and we would just talk to me about life. It'd just be me and him. And I could ask him stuff and he'd share his situations with me because he had a very similar situation. And so just that one-on-one attention, that was something that really helped me out because it really showed that there were people that cared for me. Like even one Christmas, he brought us some sweaters. And I was like, whoa, like what person from the school brings you stuff for Christmas? That's like really special. And so all those teachers that did something specifically for me, that is what really differentiated them, and that's what I thought was really cool. In the 6th grade, I had a teacher named Mr. Tucker, and he's probably, other than Don, he's probably my favorite of all time because I loved music, and I know all types of music, and I have since I was little, and he knew all the music that I was talking about. So we'd hit it off because I'd throw out a reference of some song, and he'd know like the song, and so I was like, okay, this is a cool dude. So I felt like I could relate with him personally because we shared that same interest. So basically showing the students that you care about them is going to be pretty big. And also that bad student, they come from a bad environment and they come from a traumatic experience. It's going to be hard for them to adapt. And so constantly reassuring them that they're better than where they come from, that's going to be a huge thing because that to me is one of the big things. Everybody was always telling me that I was better and that I could do better, and everybody was on my case. I was on the bus, right? It's a funny story. So I'm on the bus, and I had gotten written up at school because I flipped off some kid, right? I'm in the 4th grade. And my neighbor, Spencer, who's our best friend, he gets a write-up, right? And because I took the write-up and I crumbled it up and I threw it back on the bus. And it rolled back to his seat. He was sitting behind me. And he picks it up, he sees my name on it, he gives it to his mom because it looks important, okay? So I'm trying to get rid of it because I know the school probably didn't call my house. And so I'm like, okay, if I just get rid of this write-up, then I won't get a whooping. This is gonna go away. So I crumbled it up, threw it back on the bus, he gives it to his mom, she brings it to my house. I'm like, darn it. So she hands it to my grandmother, I'm at the top of the stairs, watching them, because the way where our stairs are, you can kind of be on the landing and you can see who's at the front door, and I'm like, shit. So she's talking to my grandmother. My grandmother's like, oh, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to handle this. And so I'm like, okay. So end of the story, I get a whooping, of course, and I learned my lesson. But always having those people there, even my neighbors, like they were always on me. So just having an environment of everywhere I went, there was always somebody there. And you know, not every student is going to have that in their life, especially when they go home, when they leave the school. But I work at the Boys and Girls Club, and I love working there because I get to deal with the kids like hands-on, and the kids are amazing. And we have kids like this that have the similar situation as mine. And so I share that with them, and they're like, really? And they listen and they feel like they can come to me. So you're not always going to have that person there that's got a traumatic experience, but for me, that is a big thing, you know, having people around that are going to always support. So, any more questions? I can ask some. Okay. Sir, what's your name?
My name is Ryan.
Ryan, what do you teach? What do you?
I'm an elementary principal.
You're an elementary principal. Okay. So do you ever have any bad kids or? I don't know how that works.
No,
now.
we don't have bad kids.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
Let me also fill in because he's new.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, the one thing that when Robert and I are talking about being here today, and it's also what he's representing, and he was hoping for some questions, but he's a non-traditional learner, and in that journey, and what he's also kind of showcasing is that he's showcasing. I talked about a little bit during my keynote. The reason why Robert is starting to go from 0 to 60 is because he's putting a story out there. And when you listened or you saw when I was kind of bragging about my students, you weren't thinking about them. You were thinking about the one student you were thinking of. And like, man, more people need to know about my student. Okay, so what does that look like? You know, whether you're an elementary school principal, I've seen some really wonderful classrooms that, you know, I'm guarded a little bit on too much social media use, but I've seen some classrooms that they have their own Facebook closed page. You know, parents love to see their daughter doing cool things or their son doing cool things. And I've seen a classroom where they had a class Twitter page and they had like a little thing that you got to do the tweet of the day, and there was 280 characters that they get to fill out. And again, is it dog and pony showing them? Is it making them more narcissistic than they possibly maybe? Or, you know, maybe is that like when Robert started putting out content, he was not just getting back from people that like, hey, this is awesome, I want to be a part of it. He was hearing people younger than him. Like, nothing fills my heart more than like, Robert's starting to trend. He still works at Boys and Girls Club. And it all started with him taking the risk of putting things out. Now, I don't necessarily want you to go down to the dark side of what people have said online, but like, it's always not positive. I mean, there's like, seriously, I've seen my daughter included. My daughter puts out content and she has to put up with people saying not nice things. You know what? That's the world. Like, it's terrible. I don't like it. But I like the fact that he's on a journey of enticing more people to share their voice, to share their journey, and to give school time and equipment. And I think that's where he started to go. You'll buy equipment. Like the podcasting stuff we set up, like his show that he had with Jack, it was hysterical. But like, it would have started, he's like, okay, I need the following things. We'll get it. We already had it. We had a student that needed a 3D laser engraver and a 3D printer other than to print a Yoda head. And she started doing things for the community because we use school resources, and I love that he constantly puts out a positive message, but use school stuff and school equipment to do that.
Okay, so you found success in the little more non-traditional classroom. How were you able to then take what you were learning in his classroom and transfer it to an English, a social studies, a math class that was not maybe as free-flowing of a room as you were in?
Okay, that's a good point. So those other classes are all really important. You need those to graduate. So when I don't know, it's really kind of magical, but when I started in his class, my grades went from like D's to like B's. I don't know how it happened, but one thing that I did learn in the class is, okay, if I want to stay in this class and if I want to take this class next year, I have to have good enough grades to do that, because they will put me back in the remedial classes. I don't know if you're allowed to say that now, but they put me in those classes to help me with the subjects that they thought were more important. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this class, I need to really like do good at school. And so just being in there and learning and doing that kind of stuff motivated me personally. But not every class is going to have that. But working on projects, you have to figure out, okay, today I need to do this. You got to have a list of different tasks that need to be done, and you have to figure out how to manage your time to get those certain things done. And so in there, I learned how to take an hour and be productive within that hour. And so that kind of transferred into my normal life is, okay, school, this is what I gotta do. So to do this, this, and this, then I can do the fun stuff. And like now, that's how my life goes because I'm still in school. I go to community college and I have to juggle my school, I have to juggle working my normal job, and I have to juggle, I manage a social media account for a bar of all places here in Wisconsin. And so I have to figure out how to juggle all that different stuff and doing videos for other clients and stuff. So time management is the thing that I got out of the class that I still use to this day. Is like, how do you wake up, you got a list. Every morning I make a list of all the stuff I need to do in the day. And that really holds you accountable because at the end of the day, if you look at that list and if you wrote 10 things on there and there's still 6 of them that you didn't do, then you're like, oh, I kind of messed up the day. And so that's what really holds me accountable. Do you have a question?
From listening to your story, I can tell that, correct me if I'm wrong, but since watching your story, I can tell that you, later on in high school, it clicked for you. What do you wish would have happened earlier, like maybe middle school? Because I know from a lot of educators saying we try to want to reach that kid a lot earlier.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like maybe you wish somebody would have offered you, or you missed that you wish you could have had earlier, so you could have started with your journey a lot earlier than later in school?
Yeah, so definitely, I feel like I would be a lot farther. There's 2 ways I look at that question. So the first way is academically. So the teachers, it's not their fault because they taught the stuff. It comes down to me. It comes down to self-accountability. I did not, in elementary school, I did not think it was important. They would pass me through every year, and I knew every year that, okay, I'm still going to go to the next grade, so why try? But that's really bad. And so I wish I could have focused a little bit more on the school side of it, because it'd be a lot easier for me now, in college doing different stuff, but I still make it through. And then the other side of it is, on like this entrepreneurial journey that I've been on, if I would have had, like how you have art, you have music and gym. I don't know if you guys do your specials that way, but when I was in elementary school, every day we switched. So Monday, art, Tuesday, music, Wednesday, gym, and then art, music, and we just switched the days like that. And so I think it would have been really fun to have that hour that we were in those classes. If we had a special that was a genius hour or an innovations class in elementary school and in middle school, I think that would have got me started on this journey a lot earlier, and there's no telling where I'd be if I had that before. But I think that those are the 2 things. Me personally, doing better academically would have helped me out in the long run. And then there's also, if I would have had some time in the day where I could focus on creating things, that would also have helped me out. Any more questions?
So you have a pretty good network of people watching over you, between your grandma and do you have the world of traumatic events, mental health? Was that ever was there counseling for you, or was there other opportunities for you?
Yeah, so when my grandmother got us, she of course realized that we had been through a very traumatic experience. And my family, they're not big on going to see a therapist or mental health. They think that most of that is not real, and I think it's real, but she thinks it's real. And so she was like, yeah, I probably need to get you guys into therapy. And so we would go from probably 1st grade to maybe 4th. Me and my brother would go see a therapist every week, and we would just talk to them. And it eventually got to the point where that situation that happened to me, it doesn't affect me anymore. It's a sad situation, and it's really bad, but they have helped me get to the point now where I can, talk about this and it doesn't really hit me as hard as it used to. And so that's something that I really think was helpful for me. And just they taught me how to deal with my problems, and I think I'm pretty well versed mentally now because they gave me some tips back then to help me out. and there's still stuff that I use today. So that is a big thing that really helped me. I didn't mention that in the last one. I probably should have, but that did play a pretty big part in my development. So.
Share the story about when we were talking with Jack and that day where you said it out loud.
Yeah.
You don't
So.
want to, you don't have to.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, it's no big. So, I guess Don had kind of did some research into my background, because that's what I think every teacher should do, is just try to figure out a little bit about your student before you have him. And so he probably already knew. Did you already know? Just a little bit? Okay, so he knew a little bit about my scenario. And so me and Jack, so what we would do is, and this is really funny, but that year, Jack had, somewhere in his schedule, I don't know how he did it, but he had time where he could come down to Don's room every day and just sit in there and work on his stuff. And I don't know how he worked that in there. And then me, I was in a basic skills development class, because my test scores were bad, so they of course put you in those classes where they're supposed to help you, but they don't always help you out. And so my teacher, Miss Fisher, she was so amazing, because she would let me leave her room and go to Don's room, because she knew what Don was doing in there was a little bit more important than my test scores and my grades. That's what she thought. And so I'd go down there I'd sign into her classroom. If she had a little assignment, I'd do it. She'd give me a grade, and then I'd go to his room, and we would just be in there. We'd record podcasts. We would talk with Don about life and stuff. And then one day we got in there, and I was sharing, we're talking about stuff, and we start talking about our backgrounds, and Jack starts sharing, he starts sharing, I start sharing. And so I was just telling him the story of my life and where I'd been from, and then Jack started sharing, and then we're all in here. And so then that was like a really big bonding thing, because before I hadn't really had that conversation with a teacher before. And Don was really the first one that was like, was listening to that and gave us time to talk about that stuff. And that was really kind of how our relationship blossomed, because I was able to share my really personal experiences with him, and that's not something that I had been previously doing with other teachers. So.
Party's missing out. This was not meant to be a self-glorification of the class, but I always remember when that moment, it was, both Jack and I were listening to that day, and sorry man, you're good. We were listening to what had transpired, because I knew a little bit, but I didn't know the whole story, and it was one of those top 5 days you'll never forget. And so he went through everything, and Jack and I, in the shock of just sitting there in our quietness, Robert goes, huh? And he said, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. He said, my grandmother said that this could be the greatest thing that ever happened to me if I choose it. And I get it. And that's when I saw him grow up, because there was this strange energy that Jack and I just saw, and that he was kind of putting 2 and 2 together, like, yeah, some messed up stuff had happened in my life, but you know what? We have the ability to make this, and I hate to say the most of it, and yeah, just watching him say that out loud was probably one of my most, just watching that was beautiful. And so when you said the mental health side, man, am I so happy that Noblesville Schools provided him. If you didn't hear, from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, all these teachers rallying around Key and Ryland, and supporting him through that. And then in some cases, and this is easier for us to say, Noblesville is a nice place. We don't have a huge caseload. So in some ways, it's easy for you guys. It is a little bit easier. We were a nice suburb. But the constant love and support that he got from, maybe not every year, I don't know, I won't speak for him, but the constant love and support he got, he in some ways took that therapy, but still had to make it real for himself. And watching in that moment is where I just thought, wow, rushed home and told Alicia about it.
So I kind of, and this is because we got 5 minutes left before lunch. So what was I going to say? So my grandparents on my father's side, I have a really great relationship with them. And my grandmother, she said, and me and Don were talking about this yesterday, in the car yesterday. My grandmother said that, and this sounds bad, okay, but she said that I think you guys actually turned out better with your parents being gone, because your dad was into this and that, and if you guys would have grown up around that, I don't think you guys would have been the men that you are today. And that happened to me when I was 6 years old, okay? I'm 21 now. I have a lot of years left. And so, stress to your kids that are in those traumatic situations that they have a lot of time left, and they can choose to be alcoholics or sad or depressed or in jail. They can choose to be criminals. They can choose to be all those bad things. Or they can choose to take that situation and turn it around and make something good out of that and let that be the light that they share with the world. So that's my last point.